Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning for MEFA's webinar about the tuition break program. And we'll tell you about that in a moment. Let me just let you know a little bit more about MEFA. As you know, this webinar is part of the MEFA Institute, and that is MEFA's training program for school counselors and others who help students and families with the whole college and beyond process. And you can go visit the MEFA Institute at mefa.org and look at all of our other lessons, and you can apply for professional development points for attending these webinars and doing the other activities within the MEFA Institute. So with that, I am going to introduce our guest this morning. We're very lucky to have with us Jonathan Gowan of the New England Board of Higher Education, NEBI, and who is director of the Tuition Break Program. And Jonathan has a presentation set up for you, but also we like these webinars to be very interactive. So please feel free to ask questions. I think the best way to handle all of the questions and make sure we cover everything is to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and I can monitor that, and then we can ask some questions aloud for everyone. So I think that's the best way to proceed. I'll also mention that if you need closed captioning, you can hit the live transcript button and you'll be able to see the words that we are speaking. And if you need to leave at any point, that's fine. Tomorrow, we usually follow up the webinar the next day with a link to the recording and to any slides and all of that. So you'll have all of that material. So with that, Jonathan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Julie. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, school counselors of Massachusetts. It's a pleasure to be with you here this morning. As Julie said, my name is Jonathan Gowan, director of the Tuition Break Program with the New England Board of Higher Education. We're also known as NEBI. That's our acronym. So if you hear me drop that word over the next hour or so, just know talking about my parent organization here. But it's really lovely to be with you. Really happy to be sharing some information as part of the MEFA Institute about tuition break. I'll share my slide deck in a moment, but I just want to say a little bit about myself and a little bit about NEBI, just so you know who we are, whether you're familiar with us or not. I have been with NEBI now. I'm just about to finish my first year leading the tuition break program and my first year with NEBI. So really glad to be back here in New England, actually, and a part of the college access and college affordability space in this way. For some background about me, I'm very familiar with the work of college admissions and college search, financial aid. Prior to joining the team here at NEBI, I worked in college admissions for about 5 years, first for Trinity College in Connecticut, more recently for Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania. So really familiar with that part of the process and eager to really make college access and affordability a more central part of the work that NEBI does. And of course, to expand and promote tuition break to students and families across New England. So I'll jump in here with our presentation. So I want to start by sort of laying the groundwork in terms of providing you with more information about who NEBI is, who is the New England Board of Higher Education, what do we do really for students and families, folks like yourselves, institutional leaders of our colleges and universities in New England. And so I'll lay a lot of sort of historical groundwork for you about our organization and why that matters as it relates to tuition break. I also want to spend some time, of course, then talking about tuition break. I want to break down really how the program operates, what you should know to best advise your students and families, and some of the major benefits that students get out of receiving the tuition break discount. And then lastly, really just talk about logistical process. I really want to spend a lot of time sharing with you the steps that students need to take in order to access the discount. Want to be able to talk about many of the nuances of programs like this and various things that you should know to be able to answer questions about questions that your students have. I also want to say I want to double down on Julie's earlier point about the interactivity of this session. I don't mind mind being interrupted at all. So please do not hesitate to drop questions in the chat, drop comments if there's anything that I can clarify, or if there's more context that you would like. Please do not hesitate to just drop those comments and let me know where I can support you. I want to make sure you get the most out of this session as possible and clearly understand how all of these things work. So do not hesitate to engage going forward. So first things first, NEBI, who are we? What is our organization? How do we operate? And why does this matter to you? So for a little bit of background, the New England Board of Higher Education, we are a quasi-public nonprofit organization located here in the great city of Boston, Massachusetts, right in the heart of New England. And we are one of 4 higher education compact organizations across the US. Now, what is a compact organization? Essentially, what we are is we are a nonprofit entity that was created by the 6 state governors of New England about 65 years ago to promote interstate cooperation around higher education. Now, Tuition Break was actually the very first initiative around which NEBI was formed, really with the mission of promoting affordable access to college, promoting opportunities across state lines here in New England. Really, the point was to facilitate as much interaction, especially within the public systems of higher ed, as possible. We got started in the 1950s, riding an Eisenhower era of interstate cooperation that coincided with the building of the interstate highway system and various other things and expansion of public infrastructure. So the compact organizations were a very interesting part of this interstate cooperation movement that happened. Now, we do have 3 sister organizations across the US. You may have heard of some of our partners, SREB in the South, MEC, or the Midwestern Higher Education Compact in the Midwest, and then perhaps our most well-known counterpart, WICHE, the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education. They oversee or work with most of the Western states as well. Anybody out there who's read some of the knocking on the college door reports, or a lot of data about the upcoming enrollment declines in traditional college-age students, you may be familiar with WICHE. They really were the tip of the spear in developing those reports. So that's a little bit about us. And I go into this history because one of the really common questions that I get as I'm engaging with students and families is, how are you funded? How does, Tuition Break sounds like a wonderful opportunity, but how does it work? What's the catch, right? And I think that's somewhat of a side effect of the way that college admissions has been carried out and financial aid has been carried out, is that students and families feel like there may be some kind of additional, there may be something happening behind the scenes that they don't know. So I like to dive into this to be fully transparent with folks like yourselves, with students and with families, so that it's clear how we work. Now, to answer that funding question directly, we're actually, I mentioned earlier, we're quasi-public, and that's really the interesting thing about NEBI, is that while we're a private organization, we receive state funding, state allocations from each of the 6 states of New England to help support our operation. And so each state every year, contributes to our operating budget. It's very substantial and critical for us to continue to function. It's really how Tuition Break is funded as well. We are entirely supported by the state and public allocations. And so we really, and I really take with great seriousness the call to serve our students and the residents of New England and get this information out to as many folks as possible. Now, let's move on to the true topic of today's session, which is really, what is Tuition Break? How does this whole thing work? And what should you know about the program? Now, first things first, Tuition Break is at the most basic, simple level. Tuition Break is an interstate, rather a regional tuition savings program. So the whole point is about saving students on tuition. Now, specifically the way that this operates, or the way that Tuition Break operates here in New England, is that we serve specifically residents of New England looking to study within the region, but outside of their home state. So for all of you folks here representing the great state of Massachusetts today, Tuition Break is going to be relevant to those students who are interested in studying out of state, but within New England. So any of the other 3 northern states, or Connecticut or Rhode Island, Tuition Break opportunities exist quite widely in each of those 5 states. So now I will say we're very proud, and we're very proud to have always served all of the public universities of the region, as well as the community colleges. So all 80 public institutions of higher ed in New England are partners to Tuition Break. So that means that there's a wealth of opportunities available to your students, and especially for students who really are keenly looking for either specific programs that exist outside of Massachusetts, or just simply want to sort of stretch their personal boundaries a bit and go a bit further from home. So how this works is that we're really truly a tuition discount. So that's a really key point I like to make. We're not a scholarship. We're not an additional sort of any kind of additional funding on top of financial aid. We really are a discount. So I like to frame it for counselors and for families as really, Tuition Break is the first line of defense. It's the first thing that happens to begin reducing the cost of college, and specifically to reduce the out-of-state tuition cost. I will say, while we're very proud to work with all of the public institutions of the region, we do not work with any of the private institutions. Tuition Break is just simply been built to serve the public system. So that's a key point I like to make. And specifically, it's about reducing the cost of out-of-state tuition on students. Now, the other pieces of Tuition Break that are important to know is that depending on where the student wants to study, which institution, and depending on what they want to study, their academic program or major, their access to Tuition Break may look a bit different. And so I'm going to spend some time unpacking the various policies and places and ways in which institutions frame Tuition Break and categorize their programs. But I want to make this point is that for many students, it may depend on what they want to study. They may be able to only receive the discount if they study a particular eligible major. I'll explain more about how that process works, but it's a key nuance that I like to point out, as many students, of course, may be framing a lot of their college search around precisely what they want to study. And actually, I do want to go back here before I move on and start talking more about the facts of the program. One of the other points I want to make as well is that the way the program has been designed and has functioned for its existence so far is that it really hinges upon residency. And that's a key point. And I realize that is an access issue for many parts of New England. And it's one that we're thinking critically about how we can address. But it is an important point to make, is that the program is specifically built for residents. So we're not available to students who are coming from outside of New England, even somewhere as close as the state of New York. They're not eligible for Tuition Break. Only residents of each of these 6 states are eligible to receive the discount. Additionally, I want to drive home the point of it's only available to students who are also staying within New England as well. So if you're studying a student, or if you're counseling a student rather, who is interested in studying in, be it New York, Pennsylvania, California, so on and so forth, additionally, Tuition Break would not be available to them. However, there are also other resources that I'll talk about at the very end of the presentation that may be helpful to you, and you may already know about as well. But it's a key distinction I like to make, as it's one of those many layers of nuance to the program. So I want to just take a moment here, really just to throw a few quick, fast facts at you, and things that really I hope will be sort of buzzwords or facts in your head that you think about as you counsel students, especially students who express to you concern about the cost of college. I imagine that's most students these days, given where the cost of college is heading. I know many students and families are concerned about this. And so, if there are key points that I would like you to walk away with, here are a few just quick key points that are really great to know about Tuition Break. First off, we're really proud of the fact that we've been expanding very rapidly over the last several years. In fact, both in the discount that we're able to provide to students and the accessibility of the program as well. In fact, our average annual discount this year is up to about $8,600. So we've really been able to bring the cost of college, or out-of-state cost at least, down fairly substantially for many students across New England. In fact, for this last academic year, not the current one, but the previous academic year, we had just under 10,000 students, 10,000 New England residents that were able to benefit from Tuition Break as well. This was an all-time high for us. We're really hopeful that we can continue this upward trajectory and offer tuition break to more and more students as well. I also want to harken back to my comments earlier about how tuition break may depend on what academic program your student wants to study. I will say 3 years ago, prior to the pandemic, we were sitting at right around 800 programs, academic majors that were offered at the tuition break discount across the region. Nowadays, as of fall 2023, we're really proud to be actually up over 2,500 programs that are available at discounted tuition across New England as well. So over the last 3 years, there's been tremendous growth in opportunity, tremendous growth in the programs that are available at reduced tuition to students. And we really credit this to an expansion of our policies and a lowering of barriers for students. I'll talk about those on the next slide because that's where we really get into the meat and the logistics of the program. But it's something I want to point out is that when it comes to sharing information about tuition break and sharing with students that the discount may depend on what it is that they want to study, I think it's absolutely critical to be able to say, look, they've been really throwing the doors wide open on what programs are available. We have a lot of institutions that have become much closer partners with us, looking for more opportunities to save students on tuition. And so it's a really key point and important inflection moment over the lifespan of the program. Additionally, I'll also highlight once again the fact that every single one of the public institutions of New England, both the four-year universities, including the flagships and other regional public universities, as well as every single one of the community colleges, all participate in tuition break. And so great representation across the entire span of New England. So here's where I want to begin really to really sort of peel back the layers of sort of the logistics of the program. How does this really work? What's the process? And I want to start by speaking about the way that academic programs are categorized within tuition break. Now, I will say I want to draw your attention to, before I start talking about these things, I want to draw your attention to our website especially. Our website has all of our program listings available. So all of those 2,500 plus programs that I was talking about in the last slide, they are all available and accessible, listed on our website by state, by institution, in various different searchable formats. So I definitely recommend check us out, nebi.org/tuition break. It's right there at the bottom of each slide of the presentation. So definitely hang on to that URL, drive your students there as we do list out all of our academic program listings. And as you explore that yourself, you'll see a few things about our program listings. And one of the things that we've been striving to do and striving to clarify over the last year is to make it obvious to students exactly how the program works, what kind of classification do various majors sit under, and how should that frame their conversation with admission officers at these various places. So we have two primary categories into which we and our partner institutions sort all of the academic programs that participate in tuition break. Primarily, these are called specialized programs, and these are called flexible programs. So I'll speak first about specialized, and this is where I'll say the majority of most of our institutions do work under the specialized program model, the flagships in particular. So the University of Maine, University of New Hampshire, University of Connecticut, all of those the 6 major flagships of the region primarily operate under the specialized programs policy, which means that they offer the discount to academic program. They offer the discount to the tuition break rate to students out of state who do not have that particular academic program available within their home state. Great examples of this are at the University of Vermont. They offer an agroecology and landscape design program. So very niche, very unique, and something that they offer at the tuition break rate to students outside of Vermont. Another great example of this is the University of New Hampshire has a Homeland Security bachelor's program. Again, very niche, very unique, and something that they offer to the residents of New England as well. And because it's such a unique program, it's a great fit for specialized because no other public institution in the region offers that. And that's really the key to the specialized program, is that this program classification is it's the original model for tuition break. It's how the program was initially designed to provide students with opportunities to study programs outside that were not available in their home state, but to be fair to them in tuition pricing. So to be able to save students money because they had to go out of state to pursue that which they wanted to. So specialized really was the original model. It's how tuition break functioned for most of our existence, and most of our institutions function in this way as well. In particular, once again, the flagships are universally under the specialized model. Now, the other program category that I want to talk about is called flexible. Now, flexible is a relatively new program category. This was actually just launched in the fall of 2019, just before the COVID pandemic. And this actually is what has allowed us to really expand our program offerings and to throw the doors wide open to students in terms of accessing the tuition break discount. So the flexible programs policy really empowers our partner institutions to offer any academic program that they would like at the tuition break rate to out-of-state students, regardless of whether or not that academic program is available in a student's home state or in another state of New England. Essentially, it empowers the institution to just give more, to be more affordable to out-of-state students. Now, this is something that really took off and something that we're really proud to see the growth and expansion. Of course, it's facilitated the growth in academic programs that's available, and it's also really streamlined the conversation with students and families. And that's the thing that I think is really critical about the flexible programs policy. You know, when we talk about specialized programs, it's a long conversation. You know, it takes me about 5 minutes to fully sort of work with a student and family to really get them to fully understand, like, okay, this is how it works, and this is how I can access the program. And to really break into the various nuances of eligibility. What does eligibility mean, and why might that program get the discount, or why might Massachusetts residents get the discount at that institution but not at this institution, for example? So it's very nuanced, it's multi-layered. But flexible really simplifies the conversation to be able to say, this institution is going to offer these academic programs at the tuition break rate, and that's the end of the conversation, right? It's much more streamlined, it's much more straightforward. And so that's why I'm really proud and happy to see the growth of that flexible programs policy, and also something good for you all to keep in mind, again, as you're counseling students. Now, one of the great elements of how our partner institutions have engaged in and fully accepted the flexible programs policy is that a good number of our partner institutions have actually gone the direction of offering every single one of their academic programs at the flexible rate, or under the flexible policy through tuition break to all New England residents. So to name a few, I will say this has taken off with vigor in Southern New England, actually within Connecticut as of fall 2023. With the exception of UConn, every other public university and community college in the state will offer all of their academic programs at the tuition break discount. So really great opportunities for your Massachusetts residents that are interested in studying in Connecticut to save some money on tuition. So the newly merged Connecticut State Community College will offer all of their programs, as will Central, Western, Southern, and Eastern Connecticut State Universities. They offer all of their academic programs through tuition break as well. So really phenomenal opportunities. In Rhode Island, it's very similar as well, with the exception of URI. The other public institutions offer all of their programs at the discount as well. So CCRI and Rhode Island College as well, especially for you folks, maybe down in the Cape or the South Coast. You know, you see, for those of you who see a lot of students looking at Rhode Island, great opportunities to be aware of there in that state through tuition break. In Northern New England, some institutions have picked up on this. The University of Maine at Farmington offers most of their academic programs through flexible. The University of Southern Maine has been expanding those opportunities as well. And Castleton, soon to be part of the Vermont State University, has also engaged with a flexible policy as well. So there's been a great traction on that front, and it has been very widely accepted in the community college space as well. So most of the community colleges, in fact, offer all of their programs through flexible as well across the region. So really, really proud to see that. And once again, it simplifies the conversation a bit. I do see we have a question that just popped up, and I do want to address this because it's a phenomenal question. Kathy Ortiz, is there a list of colleges and universities that do not accept the tuition break program? There is. And so actually on our website, nebby.org/tuition break, right there, when you go to that website, right in the middle of the screen is a call to action that says find a program. So if you click on that, that will actually take you to a place where you can interact with our searchable database in a number of ways. You can either search for individual programs, you can search by state, or you can also view a list of all of our participating institutions as well. And when you go and look at the institution view, you can actually see for each one all of the programs that they offer and the state eligibility requirements there as well. I will say, in terms of those institutions that do not accept tuition break, or at least at that highest level, all of the public universities of New England and community colleges, they work with us to a greater or lesser extent. Now, as for the actual number of programs that they have offered through tuition break, that does vary across the region, I'll be honest, but we do have all of those programs listed on our website. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. I also want to encourage you, again, continue to ask questions, engage. Let me know what I can do to further clarify the program, how it works, and what information I can share with you. So at this point, I want to move on and just sort of go through the entire process, start to finish, of how students, should go through the process of receiving tuition break. So first things first, this is the step-by-step process that I lay out for every student and family that I engage with. That this is the exact same, no matter who I'm speaking with. And it's a fairly straightforward process. I'll say one of the things I really enjoy, I really am proud of about tuition break, is that while there are nuances to the program, the barrier to entry is very, very low in terms of lift on behalf of the student. So first things first, the first step is really to ensure that the state of residence is one of the states of New England. So that's really the first bar that needs to be cleared, is that the student does have to be a resident of New England. Now, beyond that, I encourage all students and families to engage in a fairly substantial amount of research into the programs that they're interested in and the colleges that they're interested in, because if cost is a significant factor and they want to go out of state, it definitely is worth their time to really look widely across all of the public institutions of New England to see which ones may offer a program that they're interested in and which ones in particular, may be able to offer that at a discount as well. So I really can't encourage students enough really to do that research. Ask questions as well. Ask questions of me if they can't find a program, or if you know of particular academic programs that are very popular among your students and you want to know where they may be offered through tuition break. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Let me know how I can support you in that way. Now, once again, just to reiterate, we have our full program listings on our website in various different formats, so students can always come back there to look through our options and to see what's available to them. And then in terms of the actual process, the actual way to access tuition break, it's pretty straightforward from there on out. Students simply submit their admission application. They apply to the institution as they normally would, whether that's through the common application or whether through an institution-specific application. They have to apply as normal. And then I highly recommend that they list the academic program that they intend to study on that application. And for most of our institutions, especially those that operate under the specialized policy, they will have a question somewhere on the application something to the effect of, do you intend to study under the tuition break discount? We may also be known as the regional student program as well. We actually, for many, many years, have been known by the moniker regional student program, or RSP for short. You may also see on some institution websites around the region references to a NERSP rate, that is NERSP, so New England Regional Student Program. We have a number of different names. We've been known by different names over the years. some of you may remember actually the days when we were known as the Apple program or the Apple book, for example. So we've been known by many names. It's all the same thing. It all comes back to tuition break at the center. But I do want to make you aware of that as students are engaging with their institutions. They may not see the words tuition break, or they may see RSP and get confused. So just know that all of them really mean the same thing. It all comes back here to tuition break. So as they're submitting their admission application, when if they're really interested in receiving tuition break, I highly recommend list the program of interest on their application, answer the question about tuition break if it's on there. Typically, it's those institutions, the flagships especially, that engage with specialized programs that have that question built into the application. Those institutions that are widely flexible these days, that's no longer even really a requirement for them because they offer the discount so widely. I also I can't encourage enough students to do some additional research and background checking into how an institution may also, if they have any additional eligibility requirements. Some institutions do restrict tuition break a bit more. For certain programs, it may not be available until later in a student's academic career. And so it's certainly worth checking out how institutions apply the discount to students, or how it's available, if there's any other additional eligibility requirements. Now, I will say that we work very closely with our partners to make it as open and accessible as possible. And really, we're proud of the fact of its retaining its discount status. It's not a scholarship, so there's no barriers to entry as it relates to minimum grades, minimum test scores, anything like that that may be based on merit or other constructs. That's not how the program works, and that's not how it ever will work. So we're very proud of being able to retain that accessibility factor of the program as well. The last thing I want to do is just really I want to reiterate the importance of students to ask questions. I realize that this program is very nuanced. There's layers as it relates to eligibility and residency and academic program. And so I can't stress enough, the need, for students to ask questions, to engage, and I'll communicate to you, my door is always open. So if I can help you, support you in the communication of tuition break opportunities to your students, if I can clarify various policies or how they work, or opportunities that may be unique, definitely don't hesitate to let me know. Reach out to me. I'll share my contact information once we get to the end here, and really just want to reiterate, I am open for business. I'm happy to help however I can. And I also recommend as well, students engage with their admission offices around the region as well to request more information about how tuition break will work at that institution. I know many of our partners around the region have this baked into their info sessions and what they share. I know Fitchburg State, for example, I was just speaking with their director the other day. I know that that's built into their all of their programming as well. I know the University of Southern Maine markets this very well as well. They communicate it very broadly. And so definitely encourage your students to engage with the admission offices about tuition break as well. They will be happy to share whatever it is that they can. So I see we have another question that before I move on, I want to address, because it is, I see it is relevant to the conversation now about eligibility. So this is a great one to ask. And so I'm seeing, are students therefore ineligible if they are undecided? It's a great question. And so the answer to it is, like many admission questions, it depends. So in the case of those institutions that widely offer the tuition break discount to all residents of New England, regardless of their major. So if they're an institution that has fully embraced the flexible programs policy and offers all of their programs, then the student would still receive the discount regardless of sort of what their major is and if they are undecided. So they would receive the discount in that case. In the case of those institutions that engage more so with the specialized programs policy, the answer is it still depends a bit. If a student comes in truly undecided from a paperwork perspective, that is to say, like, as far as the institution is concerned, as far as the registrar's office is concerned, if they are not attached to a specific academic program, they would not be able to receive the discount. Now, if they're more in the vein of being emotionally undecided, perhaps, but they are enrolled in a particular college or program still, as far as the registrar's office is concerned, then they could still receive the discount. So it's more. It does depend a bit on the institution, if that helps. I know that's one of the layers to the program that is a bit challenging for students to understand, and I realize is a limitation as well for students who are undecided. And I can relate to that. I was a very undecided student. I changed my major 6 times when I was going to college, and so I know that can be a very significant stressor and anxiety for students. So I see there's some other questions here as well. What if they decide to change their indicated major? Will they owe that money? Yes, good questions as well. So, excuse me. So again, the answer to that does kind of depend, and this is where, and it does, the difference really is along the kind of program line. So for specialized versus flexible. Again, my answer, for those institutions that have fully embraced flexible, a lot of these questions are sort of non-issues because out-of-state students are receiving the discount no matter what. For those institutions that only sort of piecemeal engage with tuition break, which is most of the institutions, in full honesty and transparency, it will depend a lot on what the student wants to study. So for example, if a student is studying at an institution where not every program is offered through tuition break, and they initially start in a tuition break program, but after their first year, second year, whenever, if they transfer internally to another academic program that is not a part of tuition break, then for that, at the start of that next academic year, their tuition will return to the normal out-of-state rate. Now, they won't be expected to owe that money back. It's not something that the institution won't demand a refund on the discounted tuition. That does not happen. However, from the moment that the student leaves the tuition break leaves that tuition break major, moves into a non-tuition break major, their tuition rate would return to a standard out-of-state rate, but they would not be expected at all to owe that money back. That is not how the program functions. Last question you have here is if a school program doesn't allow a student to enter that program until later, is the discount only applicable for those later years? The answer is generally yes. That is, so typically how that will work, and oftentimes the framework that you'll see around this is the tuition is that the student tuition break will kick in for the student at the junior year. So they'll start as a first-year student. They'll be expected to pay typical out-of-state tuition for the first and the second year, but then when they move into that junior year, provided that they're still enrolled in that major and pursuing coursework appropriately and making good progress, then they will then receive the tuition break discount, and their out-of-state tuition rate will come down for that junior year and senior year as well. So these are great questions. And, I really appreciate, Eileen, you asking these, because we're starting to hit on the tricky nuances of the program as well. So thank you for bringing these up. They are really good questions. I also want to, while we're on the topic, I want to add another layer to this because it is really important to know, given where higher education is in New England, many of you may know, every year, programs are being either maybe possibly eliminated or rolled into one another. Colleges are constantly sort of reorganizing academic departments. And of course, that can play a role on tuition break as well as it relates to receiving the discount. So for students, if there is ever a moment in time where a student is making progress on a major that is eliminated by an institution for whatever reason, our tuition break policies actually require that student to be that student is, if they can continue to make progress on coursework and complete the spirit of the major, they actually retain the discount all the way through. I will say if an institution decides to remove a program from tuition break, they're not eliminating it from their program offerings, but they want to pull the program from offering the tuition break discount, those students are grandfathered in for the duration of their study. So they continue to receive that discount as appropriate as they entered the program under the understanding that they would be receiving the discount. So we have another question coming in. So what happens if a student already applied to a school and did not reference the tuition break program? So in that case, and this is again, especially why I can't stress enough the importance for students to communicate with their admission offices, because the program, in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, our admission officers and financial aid partners around the region are on it, that they're able to apply the discount, regardless of whether, a student has, referenced it or not, or reached out about it or not. They're able to apply it so long as it's clear to them that the student is entering into that program. If they're entering undecided, it's a little bit of a trickier question. But as long as if they're declaring themselves into a major at the time of their application, then most of the time our admission offices and financial aid partners, they are applying the discount to the student's account and bringing that tuition rate down appropriately. I will say though, having worked at admissions myself, I understand the hectic nature of the work. Things, our systems, sometimes have errors or if there are things we miss. So I can't stress enough the importance of reaching out, students, letting their admission officers know, like, look, I understand that there could be a way for me to save money on tuition. Let me know how that works. Let me know what I need to do. And please, can I ensure that this is being taken into account in my student bill, in my student account, just to make sure all I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It also really means that students and families should take a lot of time to review that award letter when they get it as well, when they're admitted to an institution, when they're having those conversations. It's a good idea to look very, very closely at that award letter to make sure that it's properly represented on that award letter before they enroll as well. It's a key part of that. Again, most of the time, most of the time it's not an issue, but I definitely recommend, again, because errors do happen, we are human, it's a great idea just to be as engaged and focused on that as possible. Another good question. And so I'll take this question and then I want to move on, wrap up my final slides, and then we'll open it up for broader Q&A. But this is a great question from Mike. How does tuition break affect financial aid awards? So most of the time, in most cases, it doesn't, because as I said earlier, tuition break generally is kind of that first line of defense, brings the out-of-state tuition cost down first. And then you get into the world of other kinds of sort of direct cost reduction, like your grant awards, Pell Grants, other awards like scholarships and so on. And so how it may affect financial aid awards in particular kind of depends on the kind of financial aid. In the world of grants or federal funding, like the Pell Grant, students are going to get it no matter what. It's not going to have any effect at all on tuition break. The same goes for many other kinds of institutional grants. Any kind of grant funding, it won't really affect at all. Now, there are some institutions that may change a scholarship amount as well, just to be fully transparent, is that an out-of-state student, for example, from New York may receive a larger scholarship than necessarily an out-of-state student from New England. Ultimately, what's happening is they're all being brought down to a same reduced out-of-state tuition cost. But sometimes, for students, an institution may change a scholarship amount because the student's also receiving the tuition break discount. To be honest, it's more or less, it more has to do with the way that it's packaged versus the actual sort of cost impact on the student themselves. The way our policies very clearly stipulate that while institutions may be able to modify scholarship awards depending on the receipt of tuition break, it cannot result in a net cost increase on the student. At the very least, no matter what, the cost has to come down to the tuition break rate. Beyond that, other institutional financial aid can be applied. But again, it can change scholarship awards, but it absolutely cannot, and our policies are very clear, it cannot result in a net cost increase on the student. So moving on, I have just another couple slides here providing some additional information, and really just want to again share that my door is open, that we are happy to help here at NEBI, that Tuition Break is happy to help as well. In fact, and thanks to MEFA's generous partnership as well, we've actually launched a sort of a virtual space for students to really engage and explore some of our partner institutions, learn a bit more about Tuition Break, And so we're calling it our College Opportunity and Exploration platform. We are running it through GoTo College Fair's virtual college fair platform. However, I want to specify that it's not a virtual college fair in the traditional sense of the word, even if we can call a virtual college fair traditional, right? But it's not meant to be a synchronous experience. It's not meant to be a college fair that happens, 2 hours on a Wednesday night, for example. It's really built to be more of a passive window shopping experience so that students who are interested in tuition break want to learn a bit more about some of our partner institutions or the college and financial aid process. They can visit this space and be able to, review some of the material we have on there, visit booths from our various partner institutions, learn a bit more about places like Keene State, like Southern Connecticut University, like Vermont State, and be able to engage with some of our other content as well. Throughout the spring, we're going to be launching, we're going to be doing monthly webinars on various topics. Next week, we're diving deep into the FAFSA on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about things like the transfer process in February. So we're really going to be exploring various other admissions related topics throughout the rest of the spring. Julie's coming back in April to do some other another webinar for us about financial aid as well. So feel free to pass this information along to your students. It's a great opportunity. We're trying to fill it with as much good content, both from us as well as our partner institutions as well. And really, I can't thank MEFA enough. They've been really wonderful partners to us, and we've been working closely for the last several months. And at this point, it really brings me to the sort of the formal close of the presentation in terms of what I want to share with you through the deck here. But I'll leave this slide up. This has all of our contact information on it, my email, phone number, all of that. So please feel free, reach out. Don't hesitate to let me know what I can do to help. Feel free to pass this information along to your students as well. We're building up our social media presence as well. We're trying to refine and streamline our website as well to make it clear how the program works and what opportunities exist. So feel free to save this information. But at this point, I really, I want to make sure I'm addressing everything you need to know. And so if anyone else has any other questions, let's talk about them.
That's great, Jonathan. And while we're waiting, I'll just mention that Jonathan and I will be back here at 5 o'clock to do a similar presentation for students and families. So if you have any students who have expressed interest in, going to another New England public university or in any of these programs, you could direct them to that webinar this evening. And further, this webinar will live within the MEFA Institute. So Jonathan, you've just done such a thorough job of talking through this program here. So if you want to tell your colleagues who have questions about this, direct them back to the MEFA Institute, and they can also listen to this recording at any time that's convenient for them. Well, I think you did an extremely thorough job, and thank you everyone else also for asking the questions. I think both Jonathan's presentation and your questions to tease out some of those finer points, makes this just great information, as I mentioned, that will live on in the MEFA Institute. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you all for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
All right, everyone, have a great day. Thank you.